Hey everyone, Lucas here. This is my review of True Blood, Season 6, Episode 1. Um, the very first episode of the new season. Now it opens with a bang, okay? It pretty much opens where the last season left off. Alright? Um, we're in the authority headquarters, the headquarters of the authority, and Bill has just consumed Lilith's blood, and Eric yells at Sookie to get out, and now they're trying to get out of the building, and they get out of the building. They meet up with the other guys, Eric's sister, and Sookie's brother, Eric's the girl that is bonded to Eric, Pam, and of course Tara, and they all get out of the building, running out of the building, and they get in the car, they take off. As they're taking off, they look back, they see that it's this guy all in blood, like just covered in blood, this naked guy, and they notice, oh my God, it's Bill, all right? And he just takes off in the air and just flies off like Superman. Building explodes. So it starts off with a bang, okay? Right where last season left off. And so we move on, and the crew in the car, they're fighting, they're arguing, and ultimately they break up, okay? Essentially Jess starts going all crazy, all right? She starts shaking and shit. Because Bill is in her somehow, his spirit or something, he's summoning her, and she's shaking like she's convulsing, like she's epileptic or something. And Sookie's freaking out, she's like, we gotta help her, we gotta help her, we gotta help her. Everybody else is kind of like, they're just kind of looking around, and freaking Sookie's brother is, Jason is freaking out and is like, what am I doing around all these vampires and shit? I can't believe you, Sookie. I can't believe you're with these guys. And he just takes off. He's like, fuck all y'all. And he just leaves. So he goes his own way. Sookie takes Jess because Sookie's freaking out, right? Because Jess is like shaking and shit. So she takes Jess over to, she's like, we got to take Jess to Bill. We got to figure out a way to fix Jess because she's shaking and she's epileptic and she's just going nuts, right? And before this, Jess like pukes out a whole gallon of blood. I mean, that's another thing with this episode. There's a whole bunch of blood, all right? Jess pukes out all this blood, right? Just fucking insane. All right, it's like a fucking cascade of blood, red blood all over the place. But anyway, Sookie grabs Jess and just takes off to find Bill because she's freaking out, thinks Jess is gonna die or something. So they go looking for Bill, and Eric is left with his sister, and he goes off with his sister, and then Tara and Pam, they go off on their own too. So it's kind of everybody just kind of splits up. All right. So that's done with that. All right. Then we move on. We move on to the governor. Governor Burrell. All right. He's talking to the people, and he's like telling them all about how the vampires are taking over, and the vampires are not what they used to be, and it's not safe, and so he puts up a curfew on the vampires, and he's essentially saying the vampires can't come out after a certain hour. So he puts a curfew on the vampires, and the funny thing, right, is he gives this whole speech in front of people and telling them, hey, we're going to protect you guys. These vampires are no good. And, we're going to put a curfew on them. And everybody's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Get rid of the vampires. Yeah. Next thing you know, the governor is in some factory place. He invites he invites Miss Suzuki, okay? And if you guys don't know who Miss Suzuki is, or you need to refresh your memory, she is part of the group that makes True Blood, because there's a True Blood shortage now, right? There's a True Blood shortage. So, you know, in this scene, we see the governor who's just finished giving this big speech insulting the vampires, and everybody's going, yeah, yeah. We see him in this factory with this Miss Suzuki who makes True Blood, and he tells her, listen, I'm going to let you use this factory, you know, because remember, the True Blood factory got destroyed. It got destroyed. So Suzuki doesn't really have a place to make True Blood anymore. So the governor's like, hey, you know, I'm going to give you this factory here. You can make True Blood here for your vampires, no problem. And Suzuki's looking at him like, what the fuck, you know? Really? And he's like, yeah, you could, you know, you can make True Blood here for your vampire clients. And she's like, why? Why are you doing this? And he's like, well, I'm going to need the money for my re-election. Just a crooked politician, man. Politicians are all the same, man. In this world and in the real world, crooked, all crooked. Anyway, so that's that. And now we move on to Andy, Sheriff Andy. Remember, last season, Sheriff Andy got with a fairy, and guess what happened? The fairy gave birth to 4 babies. All right. And Andy's like freaking out. He's like, I don't know how to take care of these babies. And Arlene is like looking at me, and she's like, well, if you're gonna screw a fairy and you don't wrap it up, guess what happens? Babies come out. And Andy's like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? I can't take care of these babies. I don't know how to change diapers. So he's freaking out, right? And Arlene is like trying to tell him, hey, you gotta fess up to your responsibilities. You put your schlong in her, now you gotta fess up to your responsibilities. So he's like, oh, fuck, you know. So we move on from there, and we go to Sam. All right, Sam. Remember last season, Sam was with Luna. Well, he's escaping with Luna and Luna's daughter, and in the process, Luna dies, and she makes Sam promise to take care of her daughter, and Sam agrees to do that. So Sam takes her daughter, Emma, and they head out to the bar. All right, they go to Sam's bar, and Lafayette is at the bar. All right, and Sam is like, listen, Lafayette, you can't tell anybody that you've seen us. Now remember, you know, everybody's turning against the vampires right now. Okay, so there's a vampire like fucking craze out there. Kill the vampires, get rid of the vampires. So, you know, the vampires are trying to be low key. All right. So Sam is telling Lafayette, please, you know, make sure you don't tell anybody that you've seen us. And so Lafayette is like, yeah, whatever, you know. And the little girl's like, I'm hungry. And Lafayette is like, okay, I'll make you something and I'll help you fix your hair too. You know, Lafayette. It's like, I'll help you fix your hair too. I'll throw that in. So yeah, so we're done with that scene, and then we move on. Remember we've got the wolves, right? And we've got Alcide, and he actually becomes the wolf leader. He becomes the leader of the pack. And he does this by eating. He munches into the hand of the ex-pack leader, and he becomes the leader of the pack. And leader of the pack comes with certain privileges. So they're out there, you know, running in the woods as wolves because they all like transform. Once he becomes the leader of the wolf pack, they all transform into wolves and they run into the forest. And you know, while in there, you know, Alcide gets busy with a couple wolf girls. They transform back into the human form, and Alcide gets busy with a couple girls. One of the girls, Danielle, is like, listen, I'm your #1 bitch, all right? Because he was getting with another wolf girl who was kissing on him. Danielle sees this, steps up. The girl's like, oh shit, I'm sorry. She backs up. and and Alcides like looking at the girl at the chicks that's come up at Danielle, and Danielle is like, I'm your number one bitch. And Alcides like, okay, you know, and they start making out. Next thing you know, Danielle grabs the other girl because the other girl was leaving. Danielle grabs her and says, where are you going? Brings her up, and they all have a threesome. It's a pretty hot scene. Pretty hot scene. All right, so we're done with that scene. We move on. Remember we were talking about Sookie's brother, Jason, right? He takes off, right? He gets all pissed and he just takes off and shit. He just, Sookie, I can't believe you're hanging around with this vampires. You go to hell. I'm taking off, all right? So he leaves and he hitchhikes. You know, he's on the side of the road and some guy stops with his car and he hitchhikes, bums a ride, starts talking to this guy, starts telling him all about his problems, telling him about how he grew up and how his sister has mental problems and how his parents were killed. You know, so he's telling this guy his whole life story, right? And just to find out that the guy he's talking to is actually Walla. All right, it's Walla, the guy who actually killed his parents, and the guy who everybody's fucking shitting bricks over, right? Everybody's scared about. Walla. It turns out to be him, you know? And by the time he realizes this, he pulls out his gun to blow him away, and Walla vanishes into thin air, all right? So that's Jason's story, okay? So remember that Sookie took off with Jess to go find Bill, all right? Because Jess is like shaking and she's all like possessed with Bill's spirit or something. So they get to Bill's house, all right? And while they're at Bill's house, boom, they find Bill in the back porch. All right, he's just sitting, chilling. All right. Now they're both kind of, I mean, they're both scared because they're like, "Who is this? Is this Bill? Is this Lilith?" Because remember, Bill consumed Lilith's blood. Okay, in the last episode, in the last season, and so he's become something else. So Sookie and Jess are like staring at him. He's sitting on a chair on the porch, and they're like, is that still Bill? Is that Billith? Who is that? All right, so they're freaking out because they just saw this guy take off into the air like Superman from the authority headquarters before the building blew up. So like, who the hell is this, right? And he was covered in blood, right? So anyway, Sookie's freaking out, and Jess is like, who is this guy? And just at that point, Eric gets there with his sister, right? Nora. And Nora is a member of, or was a member of the authority. So she gets there with Eric, you know, siblings, and they go after Bill. All right, they attack him. So Bill is like holding on to Eric, like holding him up like this. Bill's real strong now, really strong. And Sookie comes from behind and just stakes him. All right. And everybody's freaking out, oh, you know, and Bill is like looking at the stake and shit, and he's like, he just pulls it out. No, just rub it off. You know, just pulls it out. Just pulls out the stake and looks at him like, yeah, what? So so yeah, you know, and then you know, Bill is trying to tell him, hey, I got something to tell you. Listen to me. But they don't want to listen to him because they just think he's not Bill anymore, right? They think he's Billith, right? He's got Lilith in him. He's something else. He's not Bill anymore. And so Jess steps up to his defense and says, just all you guys just get the fuck out. And just get the fuck out of the house. Just leave, all right? I'm going to stay here with my maker because, you know, Bill is Jess's maker. And she's like, I'm going to stay here with him, and you guys, the rest of you, leave. So the rest of them left, and Jess stays with Bill. And so we move on from there. And we move on to Sookie and Eric, right? They go back to Sookie's house, and Eric does something really nice for Sookie. He gives her back her house, okay? He signs her house back to her, all right? And the first gesture of gratitude that Sookie shows Eric when he does this really gracious deed is to kick him out of the house and uninvite him from the house, which basically means he can't come in. She was so nice, so grateful for such a kind gesture. She repays him by kicking him out and uninviting him so he can never come back into the house again, at least not without her permission. So that was a cute gesture on Eric's part, and you kind of see that Eric has feelings for Sookie. You can tell the way he looks at her. You know, he has this sort of protective vibe around him for her. You know, it's almost like he wants to protect her. You can see that he really cares about her. And even when Eric gets out of the house, when he's kicked out of the house, and his sister Nora is there, she's sitting on the porch, and she's looking at him, and she's like, "You love her, don't you?" And Eric is like, "Shut up. I don't love her." And she's like, "No, you love her." He's like, "Shut up. Don't you?" So he takes off, and she takes off after him, and so we're done with that. You know, it really, I'd have to say about it, it really was a good opener to the season. It really was. We get back to Tara and Pam, and now they're in the bar, and the bar gets broken into by the police. All right, SWAT guys with their guns drawn, and freaking, you know, Tara tries to defend Pam and, you know, get rid of the police guy that's trying to harass her, and she gets shot. And then we move away from that scene, so we don't know what's going to happen there. We don't know. But last thing we see, Tara screaming on the ground. She gets shot. Pam is looking at her, freaking out. "Oh my God, what happened to you? What happened to Tara? They shot her. They shot her." So we don't know what's going to happen there. You know, I guess that's going to come up in the next episode. So that's that. And going back to Sheriff Andy. Now, remember I told you that he had about 4 half-fairy babies, right? This scene is hilarious, right? So he's lying in his bed, right? And out of the blue, we hear, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy," right? He wakes up, he opens his eyes, and he starts screaming. He starts screaming his brains out. And we're like, why the hell is this guy screaming? You know, as the viewer, we're watching, we don't know what he's screaming at. All we see is like, you know, he's screaming, and then the camera kind of backs out, and we see these, like, they must have been about 4 years old, right? So his babies, his half-fairy babies, had grown to about 4 to 5 years old in one night. So that's why he was screaming, because the kids were like, "Daddy, Daddy," right next to his bed. "Daddy, Daddy," bouncing up and down, all excited. And he's like, "Ah, who the hell are these kids?" You know. So he's freaking out. Arlene comes up and she's freaking out. She's screaming too. Everybody's screaming except the kids, and the kids are just laughing it off and having a great time. So that was hilarious. So these half fairy babies apparently grow very fast. So we're gonna see where that's gonna go. So yeah, you know, that was a you know, the episode was a good opener. It was a good opener to the season. It makes you curious to know where we're going to with Bill. Exactly how powerful is he? In fact, at the end of this episode, Bill is walking through the house, right? Walking through his house, and he hears this sound, and he sees this nude female with blood all over her. Again, this episode had a lot of blood. There was a lot of blood, I don't know, for whatever reason, just blood messages. You know, people are puking blood, people are covered in blood. So there's a lot of blood theme in this episode. But anyway, so he's walking through his house, you know, at night, you know, and he's put Jess to bed. He had just had a conversation with Jess in the bedroom and asked her for her support, you know, because he felt like he couldn't trust anybody else. You know, he had nobody else but her. And Jess, you know, she really loves him and looks up to him as her maker. So she's like, "I will be there for you," you know. And while they're in there, they notice that he has an extra power, because Jess drops a glass, and somehow Bill has the power to stop that glass from spilling because the glass had some True Blood in it. And True Blood is very scarce now, right? Because the factory was blown up or destroyed. And he stops the glass from spilling the True Blood, and he lifts it up with his brain, his mind, and puts it back on the bedside table. So he's showing a new power there and Jess is like freaking out. Oh my God, how can you do this? And Bill doesn't know what's going on. You have to understand that Bill is just as confused as everybody else. He doesn't know where these powers are coming from. He doesn't know what he is, right? But he asks Jess to support him and be by his side because he feels like she's the only one he can trust, okay? So that's done, and then Bill comes downstairs, and that's when he hears these sounds, and then he sees the naked woman covered in blood. And next thing you know, there's another naked woman to his left, the same woman, but now two of them covered in blood, and now another one to his right, and now before you know it, they all converge right on him in the middle and go right into him. Boom! They go right into his body, and the episode ends. So, great episode, great opener. You know, it makes you want to know where stuff is going to go. Whereas, what's up with Bill? Okay, where are these powers coming from? What can he do? What is he capable of? Who's this woman covered in blood that has somehow gone into him? Three of them at the same time. You know, what's going to happen with Sheriff Andy and his half fairy babies that have grown to like 4 or 5 years old in one night? You know, what's going to happen with True Blood and the manufacturer of True Blood? All this stuff. So it leaves all these questions in your head, makes you curious to know what's going to happen the next show. So good episode, good opener. Hopefully it grows from here. And yeah, so it was good stuff. It was good stuff. I was quite happy with this episode. All right, well, that's it for my review of True Blood Season 6, Episode 1. And hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in Episode 2, right? All right, bye.